Cap Fact, the changing genre of Captain America comics. So I've been rereading through some of the issues of Captain America comics which were published in the late 40s. And it's been an interesting thing to see the way they've kind of changed the genre throughout the publication. Like it had started off before the US had entered World War II, so it was kind of more about stopping internal threats to the US. And then once the war started, it started with him still dealing with internal threats, but also fighting offshores. But then it seems like there was a bit of confusion about what to do after the war. They mostly go into generic superheroics, but it's interesting because around issue 70, which is getting towards the end of the run, there seems to be a drastic shift in the genre. And I've talked about it before, so sorry if you're rehearing this, but it's interesting just to re-experience with more of that insight to it, where there are a lot of stories that seem to deal more with kind of gritty crime, and a lot of it started shifting to where Cap isn't really even involved in the stories. He's more sharing a story he heard and was just tangentially involved in. But what's really interesting is that there were a number of stories, because each issue would contain multiple stories, there were a number of stories that seemed to be basically romance comics. Again, these often wouldn't feature Cap in a leading role, like he wasn't the one getting in a relationship, but it would deal with there was some crime going on, and of course, a couple was involved, and they had to work things out with each other to get together at the end of it. And I can only assume this was in an attempt to gain more female readership. It was around this time that Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, who had originally created Captain America but had since left the company, had also basically created the romance genre of comics. And so I think Timely Comics, which was the predecessor to Marvel, were trying to capitalize on that. They also had introduced Betsy Ross, who had been a love interest for Cap, and they made her his partner over Bucky. Bucky does come back occasionally, but it seems like the focus was on her. And some of the ads in the comics even started changing. I wasn't paying as much attention to this, so I can't say how prevalent it was, but I noticed there was like an ad for something to keep pantyhose up. I don't know enough about, 40s female fashion to understand what they were, but it's obviously an ad directed towards girls versus guys, at least for that era. The series ended then at issue 75, so it was clearly, towards the tail end of this series. So I wonder if they were just scrambling to try and keep sales up and it didn't work.